Right?
Nope. He was 19 and lean, well, minus the muscle. His hair was all tousled. It ran down his neck and covered his ears. He looked like a sheep who'd never seen shears. The pack on his back, a backpack some would say, would tilt as he moved. It leaned and it swayed. He was cranky and tired. His clothes long expired. He had stains in his mood. His shirt wore his food. But after 6 months of travel, it was time to grapple with the thoughts he'd been having, the knowledge he'd been grabbing, and put it in a nice compact bundle. A presentation of learning, they'd named it and framed it, for it's easy to tell, way to quell that question from hell. What did you learn on TBB? The question so vague left him plagued since CC when his dad asked so casually, did you grow, did you change, can you claim to be different? He'd said it with a smile, while meanwhile the lack of an answer turned his son's mind to a dancer, lost in a swirl of unfurling thoughts and ideas, and he started to ramble, his mind in a shamble. But he changed his banter from a gallop to canter and replied with a lazy, I don't know, maybe. But now faced again with the question at hand, he knew it was time to grind and find an answer, something manageable, tangible, understandable that he could show to his family and friends and say, look what I've learned. So when it came time to think, he thought it'd be logical to start chronological, where they first met at Ingwe and slept in a cabin filled with spiders that crept through the walls while they dreamt. It was at Ingwe where they shared their life stories, their sadness and glories. They grew so close and knew what was most important to each other in such a short amount of time together. It was as if they had longed for this bond of maturity, the surety that they could start with a clean slate, an empty plate to fill with what they chose to show, like a buffet of personalities and traits. Or should he talk about the patience hospice care showed to their patients when they refused to take their meds and admit they were sick, when they were too in denial to pick the right choice, but to voice his opinion as fact just like that was unfair, and how dare he decide what's wrong and what's right? I mean, to shine a light in his own hypocritical life, he smoked every day and he'd be the first one to say that wasn't the best way to live. Or maybe he'd mentioned the monetary contention due to his host family's miscommunication with the Pledge Aid organization. See, his host dad disapproved of the pay they were receiving, and later that day he was told he was leaving, which proved to be an uncomfortable evening. But he then moved in with Carol, whose mannerisms matched her grandmotherly apparel. She was a hospice carer and the bearer of a fair standard of living to those which she cared for, and a share of said privilege. But as an upper middle class white kid, he'd never be that relatable hero for the impoverished people. He'd always be that deciding outsider, the patronizer for those who have less, and at best he'd be just another small drop in this ocean of aid. But with Carol, he saw the impact she was making, the crack she was breaking in this wall that separates us all into our social classes, these masses of people all grouped together by arbitrary differences and separate instances of color and money. Her relatable social standing had his mind landing on this idea that despite his mirror's reflection, he still had a connection to people. And this introspective correction on human cooperation changed the way he saw aid. But his media project had covered that topic. He wanted something fresh, something new, something he didn't already do. So maybe a topic in India would add some diversification. A presentation on education seemed fitting. After all, his thoughts on learning had been sitting and burning in his mind for some time. His education so far had been banking, just cranking out units and benchmarks with uniform styles and piles of tests and exams and nights full of crayons just to pass some standardized class, to be compared to the rest, to prepare for the next repetitive steps. But he'd seen that learning could be so much more, not a chore, but a chance to explore this cultural lore of the past, not just facts in a class. It could be spiritual, more meaningful and emotional. Or maybe he'd bring up the cultural hiccup he'd experienced the first day in Delhi, a setback in his normal societal breathing of comfortable meaning in the world around him, such a change of pace from Western to foreign, a new face of culture, a visual exposure to colors and sounds, mounds of variances breaking the bounds of his past experiences. Or the burdens the country carried, unearthing his buried thoughts on his gender, the seminars that taught him about who he is and who he is not, something he'd never thought of a lot. Why did the word privilege carry so much baggage? Why did he feel guilt, not a rite of passage about being a man? He couldn't understand how the hand he was given was different from women, why he felt like the cards he was dealt held him back from connecting. He wanted to help, but was just left standing, silently demanding to be heard when it wasn't his time to speak. It wasn't his time to speak. It was his time to listen, to partition his opinion from the collision of emotion he couldn't comprehend, and to lend an ear, to just be near, to just hear the things that others feared. It was a tough country for everyone, himself included, the way it uprooted preconceptions and challenged their strength, but it pulled them together like glue or a tether. And he could talk about that, the light and the black, the fight they fought back against the attack on not just their gender, but their group as a unit, each person a component, like halves of a whole or parts of something so much more. But those topics were heavy. He'd maybe go lighter with the brighter and quieter country of Thailand, the hand they'd all needed to help them back on their feet. There they'd studied the Green Revolution and end-all solution at the Agricultural Institution, a way to feed those in need, a guaranteed scientific method. And then the later result, the industrial system, the way they tamed the terrestrial sanctum and juiced it dry, leaving it to die, the way they turned the earth into a machine, just spitting out products for human greed. But despite knowing the harm in growing food in such an unsustainable way, he couldn't refrain from still wanting the convenience of choosing, the ease of not losing his choice, but he'd silence his voice as a consumer, a user of money. It's funny, the battles he'd pick, he'd be so quick to defend certain trends in mending the earth, but when it came to his own sacrifice, he would just ditch his advice and return to his vice of consumption. It was just hard for him to be critical, cynical of a country he lived in, was raised in. It made him who he was, and by saying the U.S. had flaws would call attention to his own imperfection. He had to accept that not acknowledging what's wrong would only prolong the negatives, but by embracing the mistakes, he was changing, not shaming his country, but framing it better. Shining light on the darker parts to see what needed fixing, picking apart the faults he could improve, not remove the love for his country. Well, what about Ecuador? I mean, there didn't seem much. He was stuck in a rut with the rest of his group. He tried to stay present for the last bit of the trip. He didn't want to end it by checking out early, and surely he'd learned something throughout their last country. I mean, a month had gone by, there couldn't be nothing. He learned so much in these other countries, why not this one too? Was he just tired, ready to retire early? He'd been so invested in the other units and their topics, his media projects reflected that, but he started to slack in Ecuador. He couldn't do another project, he had to cut back, he had to leave the track he'd been on in order to stay present. But he'd also seen who he wanted to be, or maybe it'd be more fitting to say who he didn't want to become, a college bum, no work and all fun. Maybe he could write about that, a reflective piece on the perspective he gained on his life overall. He'd gone from looking at small pieces, next steps on a staircase, not the floor he was reaching, to seeing a broader meaning to the rest of his life. He suddenly felt the necessity to strive for achieving. He saw beyond the fleeting view of next weekend. He knew he had more to give than just being, and the next couple of years would no longer leer over him like an unreachable set of gears. He'd never be near enough to turn to set his life in motion in this newfound devotion to swim in the ocean with his peers, a sea of uncertainty of what's ahead, and that didn't matter. The latter seemed daunting, but he'd expelled that haunting feeling that he'd never be the best, never be distinguished from the rest. He still had no clue what to do. He was out of ideas. His worst fears had come true. Here he was so close to the finish line, but he was out of time. He had nothing to show, nothing to prove that he'd grown. And man, you know what? Maybe he just shut thoughts about his project out. It was too tough. And I mean, he'd already done enough. What more could they want? I mean, to be blunt, it seems stupid. It was useless to try to summarize all his thoughts and learning into one big blob, a churning mob of ideas. So he'd just go with that. He'd throw in the towel, and he might get a scowl, but he'd be better than doing a damn project. So yeah, so obviously he was me. And it was kind of funny because it really did reflect how I felt about the project. We had a solo day when we were in Virginia, which is where they pretty much sent us out in the woods by ourselves and said, have fun for like 5 hours. And so I'm out there supposed to be thinking about my POL, you know, supposed to be reflecting on all these things I've learned. But all I could do was just think about how cold and tired I was, so I just took a nap on a bench. Yeah, and then I got back, and I was one of the first people back, of course. And I got in the shower, and I'm standing there in the shower, and I'm like, oh my God, I haven't learned anything. You know, I haven't thought about my project. What am I going to do? And then in like 5 minutes, it hit me, and I'm like, oh, I'll just write about that. The fact that I don't know what I learned. And so, yeah, it's a lot easier for me to kind of talk about little things and not really like go into depth with them, because I really couldn't at this point process it in depth. So it's just a lot easier to kind of write about all of it. Anyway.
It's very clever.
Any questions?
Have you done spoken word poetry before?
I have not. This was my first one.
Wow.
Yeah, and I kind of always wanted to, and it was actually Nelson who kind of inspired me to do it. Yeah, I'm gonna put it on you now. He did his first one on this trip in Ecuador as a media project, and even though I didn't get to hear the whole thing because I was really sick, just that he did his first one and it went really well just kind of showed me that, yeah, I should try it. And I did it. I'm really proud of it.
Yeah,
Very, very good. Thank you.
So Alex, what did you learn on this trip?
So he was 19 and yeah.
But really, how will you address the question when you get asked it?
Yeah, you know, as we've talked about in the thing this morning, it depends on who asks it. You know, my parents ask it. I'll say, I don't know. But if like, you know, if someone's really interested, I guess I could talk about a few of these, but not in depth because I really don't know. And I think I'll know later on, and hopefully I'll start to kind of reflect on it once I've shown what I've learned by doing it, not just thinking about it. And a lot of them were just really subtle and subconscious, and I don't know if I'll ever really recognize it, but it's there. Yeah.
What's your plan next?
Next year, I'm going to American University here. Yeah, this fall. No idea what I'm going to study. I'll probably just do something like this again. So yeah, and I'm really excited to be here. Yeah, I have no idea about majors or anything this summer. I'm probably just gonna bum it around, maybe get a job. Who knows? You know, no work, all fun, sort of thing. Yeah, so that's my plan so far. Just kind of winging it.
Yeah. Surprise, surprise.
Do you think you've changed at all in how you relate to people or your peers or anything like that?
Yeah, I think I do. That's a tough question. Yeah, as all of them are. And like I said, I think it's more subtle changes. You know, I couldn't put a finger on it, but I've definitely noticed like the way I interact with people seems a lot more. I don't know. I feel a lot more like interested in what they have to say in a way. You know, it's not just talking to or wait to talk when you're having a conversation or just, you know, small talk. I actually kind of want to connect. And it's funny, we always talk about, you know, how weird it's going to be going to college and going back to like a high school like setting. And so one of the things I really hope to take with me is just kind of what I've learned on this trip in the sense of who I can be, not who I have to be, sort of thing. Mm-hmm.
This is more of a comment than a question, but I really like how you actually didn't avoid answering the question because in a way you really did. And that's the thing, when you're asked that question, it's just like, well, like, how could I possibly, I mean, that's like, you could write a whole like thesis or, you know, a book or several books on what you've experienced. And it's weird to think about learning because also learning seems to be such a measurable thing in a way. And it's like, well, let me just like write down like multiple choice tests. Yeah. I'll just like answer what I've learned on this trip. So I just wanted to say I really appreciate your approach and how informative it was because you really did approach and answer the question or describe it. It's like it's not a question and answer exactly. So
yeah, no, thank you.
To approach.
Thank you. Yeah, that was kind of one of the things I struggled with. Is like I couldn't just think of one big thing I've learned and like how I would go in depth with that. And so that's kind of the irony in the piece is when he gets to the end and he's like, oh God, I've learned nothing. He's actually learned so much, and that's how I felt about it. Is I still could not really put any other words on it besides what I've written or put a finger on it or just like list out bullet points of this is what I've learned, but I know it's there. And so that was my way to kind of try to describe that it's there and I feel it, but I can't explain it.
Well, Alex, it's also like you showed us who you are. Like that's what this all is about who you are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, I heard that. I like throwing the little bits of like humor in and the jokes and the breaks and whatnot, because that's like how I like to think that I talk, and so I didn't want to make it just like an essay piece sort of thing. And it was a lot of fun doing like a spoken word thing that I'd never done before, because you can add so much more personality into it, so much more inflection, and kind of put yourself in it a lot more than just like in an English class where you have, you know, your thesis, your 3 paragraphs, and a conclusion. It's a lot more free. And I found that when I was just writing, it would just come out sometimes, and then sometimes I'd be sitting there for like 3 hours and type 2 words. But yeah, it was just kind of like it was how I was speaking. So it's a lot of fun.
Was lack of pictures because you didn't ever get your camera out?
Could be that. No, I just felt like this was the best picture you could see here.
He doesn't want to be framed. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for hearing it.
Ela vai economizar com efeito.